Today we have something that I've wanted for quite some time. This is a Mac Classic, or more specifically, a Mac Classic 2. Does it work? No, it does not. But hopefully it has a problem that is quite common with these Macs, namely leaking capacitors. And hopefully by the end of this video, we shall have it working. So, let's take a look. Now, the leaking capacitors effect typically shows up on this screen as a sort of checkerboard pattern, and that is what I saw in the listings on eBay. I'll plug it in a moment and we can see if that is actually still the case. But just having a little look at it, it's in quite nice condition in terms of the box. Good old full color logo sticker. Looking at the back, we have all the usual ports: SCSI, floppy drive, microphone, I think that's ADB, that's the printer, modem, speakers, power, and the on-off switch. There's the speaker. Something I think is going on there. We may have a broken switch or something. I need to look at that. To get into these things, there's two screws buried right down here, and that means we need a long screwdriver. Fortunately, I've got one, but there are only two screws as far as I can see. There's one here and one in there. The other two are missing. Let's bite the bullet and plug it in and see what happens. Okay, so it's plugged in. Let's flick the switch and see what happens. I can hear it whirring, and that's what we get. Now, I think this is the bad capacitors problem, but we shall see when we take it apart. Now, because this has got a CRT in it, you need to take very special precautions when dealing with a CRT, because these have got lethal voltages on them. And I'm going to take this very slowly because this is the first time that I have dealt with a CRT. So let's turn it off. We're going to need to discharge it. A quick shout out to our sponsors, PCBWay. If you need a printed circuit board, just upload your Gerber files to PCBWay, and a few days later you will get back a nice shrink-wrapped PCB, or 5 or 10. They also do shared projects such as this. They also do sheet metal work, CNC machining, 3D printing, and they even do PCB assembly. This board took me 4 hours to hand solder under a microscope. You could get that done by PCBWay. Check them out, www.pcbway.com. Now, to get into it, we need a really long screw driver. And I have one here, T15 by 250 millimeters. So, let us take out, I'll turn it around so you can see it better, the one screw which is buried down here. I will try and find, assuming that I get this working, I will try and find two more screws to put back into it, but for the time being, this ought to lift off. There we go. That's the insides of it. Nothing particularly remarkable there. This is the insides of the Mac. Now, the thing we do not want to touch is that and that until we have applied that. And this is just basically a screwdriver with a long, in this case green lead, attached to a crocodile clip. And what this is going to do is discharge the anode of the tube. So there are a couple of precautions. Discharging a CRT is just like discharging a big capacitor. Basically you just need to short across the terminals, and so from the anode to earth. Thus we'll clip one end to the earth lead, or the earth strap, and the other end, now keep your second hand a good distance away. There we go. Pop him out. Make sure that's discharged. Make sure that's discharged. And we're good. So what have we got here? We've got a SCSI hard drive of unknown origin. We've got a floppy drive. We've got the CRT. We've got the analog board, which is all the power supply stuff and thingy. And we've got the main board. So I think the main board should just slide out. Be very careful not to mess with that thing on the end of the CRT, because that contains the little nipple that is basically the seal for the vacuum in the tube. So there's the main board. Now we have a battery. Let's take that out. We can replace that. Lithium, so that's okay. But I did buy a replacement battery, so we can put that in. Now these caps are notorious for being leaky. So this bag that you may have noticed sitting on the side there is a complete set of replacement caps, both for this board and for that board. So this is a cost-reduced PCB, 68030, 16 megahertz, I believe. Now that is worrying. Have a look. Have a look at that. I don't know if the overhead camera will see it, but something is bashed against there by the looks of it. That looks pretty bad. I don't know if all those pins are even intact. Now what's interesting, it's got a tag on here, it's got a label on here from Retro Passion with no date specified. So I guess somebody's been in here and somebody's done something, and then somebody's done something else. Now, there are definitely legs that are not attached. That's a bugger. Okay, let's continue. Oh, look, this is in any case, this is a cost-reduced PCB, which Commodore users will be very familiar with the idea of cost-reduced PCBs. On here, I can't particularly see any obvious signs of cap leaking, but there we go. So before I go any further, I'm going to try and straighten those legs out a bit. It looks like one pin is shorted, although it doesn't seem that there's anything that's actually ripped off the board, which is a good thing. This is actually the first time I've used the microscope in anger, and you can see I've now actually got it on an angle poise style bracket. I need to think about actually longer cables, because plugging that in from over there is a little bit awkward. But it's powered from my MacBook and also at the same time feeding OBS on the MacBook. So I'm recording that and you will be able to see the feed from that. But at the same time, it displays on the monitor. Now this is only a little 7-inch monitor, but it could display on a big, massive monitor if I had one to display it on. Anyhow, the angle poise lamp, or rather the angle poise arm, which I could probably double as a camera arm, has the advantage that you can get in where you want to and you're not worried about the stand and so on, and limitations of space and arms getting in the way, but at the limit of being kind of wobbly. Still, let's have a go. I'm going to use a Stanley knife, standard yellow, just to see if I can get in there and separate those pins that appear to be shorted. Okay, I will have to tack that down. That's definitely disconnected. I think that will do if I can tack that down with some solder. Okay, I'm going to see if I can tack it down. I'm using a small blade, or tip rather, and small, at least for me, tipped solder. Right, I'm hoping that big blob is actually connected. So it should just be a matter of clearing the bridge. That we definitely don't want. No, sadly the leg just came off, so I don't know what to do about that. In theory it means taking that CPU off and putting another one on. Is that something I can do? I don't know. Now I'm not going to recap this board because I believe it's already been recapped. These are Worth electronic capacitors, which were certainly not the originals, and this label Retro Passion doesn't have any information on it, but if you go to their website and look at the recapping service that they have for this Mac Classic 2 board, you will see, and there are a bunch of telltales, including the serial number, the slight damage to these pins on this CPU, and the wear pattern on these connectors, that this is the actual motherboard that they have shown on their website, this actual one, and that showed that it had been recapped. I don't know, that presumably has been rubbed off some time since and this damage has been done. So I don't believe that this board needs to be recapped, but in theory I could possibly, with some very fine magnet wire, replace that pin, but I don't like the look of the other pins there, and I think I'm going to try and replace the CPU. So I've got a CPU on order. Replacing it is going to be fun, but I think we're going to leave that for part 2. So during the meantime we will continue and look at the analog board, which I believe does need recapping. So this is the main unit once again, and to get this off we're going to need to unscrew it. Now we're going to need to take this board off because it is soldered in at both ends, and we're going to need to take this out. So that's come off and it's attached to the mains earth, or rather the earth, so off. And I'm going to put this screw back in because it's holding the screen in. And there we are, that's out. So now let us examine this analog board. At first glance, this looks to be in quite good condition. There's not a lot of sign of cap leakage. And this is sort of where it's traditionally going to leak. It's not a huge amount of goo, or really any goo. I mean, it just looks like a bit of dirt. But let's take the back off. So the back is held on by these plastic studs. They're kind of like pop rivets made out of plastic. And so if we push through the peg, they should come out, and then hopefully we won't actually lose them as the first one goes flying off. And that one in the middle is the last one. Okay, now we want to take our screwdriver and make sure that these capacitors are discharged. So looking at the back, that actually looks pretty clean on the back too. Does this board really need recapping, I wonder? So what we're going to do is take all these capacitors off first, and I'm going to mark them off against the list in the printout, just to confirm that these are the correct values and in the correct orientation. And I have my batch of replacement capacitors. There are two missing. One is 1000 microfarads 10 volts because I didn't get enough, and the other is 220 microfarads 400 volts, which is this big bugger, and that's because I couldn't find one at the time, but I've got one coming now. So let's get going. Right, no particular order, but let's just start with this one. 1016. I'm going to tick this off just to prove that it's correct. And in fact I can go through all of these, and you don't need to watch me do this, so I'll come back in a second. They are all confirmed apart from these two, which are these ones here, because they're covered in glue and I can't see the values. So let us start to take them off. I've positioned this right down here. Unfortunately you won't see it too well on the overhead, simply because the flyback has got a lead that goes straight down, and this is going to make it easier to desolder. So let's just have a look at the board under some of these. It does look a bit gunky. Hard to tell. Could be the beginnings of captures. Right, I will clean the rest of this board up. You don't need to watch me, and then we can start putting new caps in. So now let's start putting capacitors in, and I'm just going to grab them off the pile and basically do them as I come to them. Right. So this one is 470 10 volts. We're actually short by 1 microfarad 50 because there's 3 on the board. There's 3 listed, but 1 microfarad 50, there's only 2 on the BOM. So I'm 1 short. Here we go. 1 microfarad 50 volts. These are Rubicons. So I've got a bunch of these. They won't match, but decent brand. So let's get in there. So that's the analog board done, with the exception of this capacitor, and substituted that value capacitor there. I'm just waiting for this one, and then we can put it back. So I think that's going to wrap it for this video. Thank you for watching if you've got this far. If you'd like to support the channel, please check out my Patreon. The link is in the description below. My patrons are scrolling up the screen, and I am very, very grateful to them for all the support that they give. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. See ya. Bye.